I think the sort of pie in the sky big dream for someone who studies and works with social data like myself is using these tools informed by data, calibrated by data, to generate realistic synthetic social systems that
Hmm.
can be experimented on without concerns about cost or ethics.
Hey everyone, it's your host, Casey Lai, founder of Prometheum, and I'm back today with you for another exciting episode of the Data Fabric Show. I'm super excited as we keep pushing the boundaries of data fabric and Gen AI to get all these great thought leaders and also just experts in data analytics join us to talk about all things data, all things analytics, talk about cool trends that are going on, challenges that they might be having, and of course, we're going to have to talk about data fabric. So with me today is my very special guest, Bruce Desmarais. Bruce is a professor at Penn State, and he's done a lot of amazing things. I'm just going to very quickly share Bruce's background, but what I'm also going to do is turn it over to Bruce, Professor Desmarais, Dr. Desmarais, and have him, give a little bit of background in terms of all the cool stuff that he's doing with data at Penn State. Bruce, welcome to the show.
All right. Well, thanks, Casey. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. Yeah. So I am in political science at Penn State and also a co-hire with the Institute for Computational and Data Sciences. And I direct the Center for Social Data Analytics as well as the dual title PhD program in social data analytics. And so kind of in all parts of my work at Penn State, teaching, research, and the service I do for the university, I'm working on, broadening and bringing everyone possible into the world of data analytics, and also looking to ways to apply data analytics to the world outside of academia.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. Now, for those of us who may not know, probably present company included, what is social data analytics? You might kind of share a little bit about that.
Sure. So it's just advanced data science tools, such as network analysis, the analysis of textual data, the analysis of traditional tabular data in sort of large form or complex formats that are generated through some kind of social behavior. The canonical type that most folks would be familiar with are digital traces left by using like a social media tool such as Facebook, LinkedIn, or X, where people who are in my area will collect data on what people are doing online and construct large-scale structured and unstructured data sets from that, and try to glean insights into problems such as misinformation dissemination, political polarization, bullying online, and or industrial innovation, all sorts of topics that would relate to the process of people generating data through their, thoughts, discussions, or behavior online.
Wow. Okay. And Bruce, is this something that all the social media companies do internally, or do they engage, experts and folks like you to help them with this type of work?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so it's a mix, really. So every major social media company has a large staff of internal data scientists who do what we would consider social data analytics. So it's a really exciting career path. We've actually Penn State, our graduate program, has placed over a dozen students in data science positions in the major tech companies. We have several alums who are at Facebook, who are at Google, and those are really exciting.
Hear that, mom and dad? Just want to get that plug out there, right? Send your kids to Penn State, get into this program. Lucrative careers waiting for them.
Thanks, Casey. I agree with you. Yeah, but academic researchers are often called on to collaborate with or to study what's going on in the social media data. I myself had a pretty exciting experience. I spent a sabbatical working as a research scientist in core data science at Meta, and had a chance to really get my hands on a lot of applied problems in that context. So that's, very exciting, like back and forth between industry and academia.
Got it. That sounds wow. I mean, I had no idea so much analysis and data analytics kind of go into that. I guess I'm glad that a lot of it does go into that. So a lot of these things, hopefully, there's bad things they find like bullying and that type of stuff that they can flag it right away, identify it right away, and do something about it. So from that perspective, I'm thankful. I think we're all thankful as parents for the work that you do, and hopefully it makes social media a little bit safer place for all of us. But maybe what we can do, Bruce, is maybe you can kind of share a little bit about kind of your world as you work with data, right? Love to for you to kind of talk about some of the challenges that you've had, right, or daily challenges, very common challenges that you have, but also what are some things that you've been really proud of, right? You and your team, what you guys have been able to do, Penn State. I think it'd be great for folks to know, like, you can actually use your superpowers for good and actually achieve some cool things to do. So maybe we could take some time for you to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I started where a lot of researchers, scientists start, which is with the analytics, like courses on how to analyze data once you have it and it's in a nice format. And what I quickly discovered when I was like teaching classes, in particular and doing my own research, was that that's a big assumption that you come to your analytics task with like clean, well-prepared tabular data.
Wait, what? That doesn't always happen? No, I'm so shocked.
Right? People don't fill out surveys, or the formatting of data changes over time and you have
Yeah,
to integrate it, or you run into problems when you're dealing with proprietary data where
yeah,
data that used to be free is no longer available. There's a big shift that happened when Twitter changed to X and
right.
the API terms changed. It used to be the case that academics could get access to a lot of data for free, and now it costs quite a bit if you want to,
Yeah.
fund a whole project through that. And so many
So
things.
it's not only like data integration challenges, because I think that's a big part, right? Is how do you deal with different formats, changing of formats, et cetera. But there's also just access. Certain data may not be accessible anymore, being able to get your hands on that, and then just being able to somehow put all the data together. And then I guess you got the good old data wrangling problem and data prep problem that you have to do. And, I think all of us who are listening in the audience can all relate. This is something that everyone deals with in their organization. How messy it is for you, because it's I guess you're dealing with sources from outside of your organization all the time, right?
That's right. Yeah, most as a researcher, most of the data is sourced from outside. Where, especially a social researcher, we're trying to study the outside world of human behavior and communication. So most of the interesting data is generated outside of the organization. So trying to deal with who actually owns the data, under what terms can we share it. When it comes to like data storage and access, oftentimes we have to have kind of long conversations that loop in like the Penn State legal team on what level of kind of firewall protection should the data sit behind. Me as the researcher, what I always want to do is share the data with everyone and give folks
Yeah.
access. But of course, if the data is something that you purchase and it's someone's product, we purchase data sets all the time. You can't just disseminate that, and you shouldn't, because it would devalue the work of those who put the data together in the first place.
Got it. Got it. And what would you say if you had to rough swag it? What percentage of your time do you spend, actually dealing with this part, right? The not so glorious part, getting proper access, finding the data, figuring out how to do all the data integration, data munging, before you can actually do some real analysis and derive some insights.
It's a good question. I've never really put an amount of time on it, but I would say probably about 50% of a data intensive project where the
Yeah.
data is my own and coming out of my own team is put into just getting the data ready to be
Yeah.
analyzed for
It's
coherence.
it's the grunt work, and I think you're right. I think industry average, I've heard, anywhere between 40 to 65%. So I think you're kind of right. And we're talking big enterprises, right, that have a lot of people, a lot of staff, a lot of resources and money. And still that's a challenge. So I think for the audience out there, you're not alone. Even smart, PhDs like Bruce here, goes through the same challenge. So it's something that we all have in common. And, from that kind of shifting gears, one of the reasons why, I started Prometheum was because I saw this challenge over and over again. And I didn't think it was going to get any better. Like, I don't think you can convince people that all the data is going to be on one format, all the data is going to be on one platform, all the data is going to be on one vendor in one location. Just was never going to happen. In fact, I think when I started Prometheum about 6 years ago, there were probably like 300 different vendors. If you looked at all the different vendors of every database, data warehouse, data lake, and SaaS applications, I'm pretty sure it's way more than 300 now, right? So I would say kind of the fracturing of the data is not something that's going to get better. It's only going to continue. So this problem isn't going to get better. And that's why like we've started Prometheum, whereas a data fabric, you can get a unified view of all your data, regardless where it is, what format it is, and you can access it, and the integration is done on the fly in memory. So you can actually start consuming and using the data as opposed to spending 40 to 50% of your time just doing this work before you kind of get to probably the fun stuff, right? That you really want to do, that it's, the question that you wanted to answer. So this is, in a way, I'm glad I'm talking to you, Bruce, because, you validate why I've dedicated over 6 years of my life to starting this company, Prometheum, to tackle this challenge. And it's something that we see kind of all the time. And I think as, more and more data is now cloud native and you have different cloud platforms, it's probably going to get worse. And then in your world, if you're dealing with social media data, right, it's not in the same format as tabular data, right? So there's more work that you gotta have to do there. So it's definitely a problem that we see a lot, and it looks like you're experiencing it on a day-to-day basis, Bruce.
No, that's actually right. I should disclose that I don't use any data fabric tools myself. I have not used them in the past. But the motivating case that you describe is certainly resonates with me in my work. One thing I would say is I see this as a great opportunity in terms of the reason that we, have access to so many data sources in so many different formats is because, things that we used to have no data about, now we can track data through digital traces and other types of interesting social sensors, right? If you go back 30 or 40 years and you wanted real-time data on what people are communicating about, that would have been a harrowing task to collect that kind of information. But now you can just kind of track it on any platform that you get. So it's a great opportunity. And any tool that's oriented towards more easily integrating data, especially quality checking it and validating it, because that's one of the challenges that researchers have to come up with.
Right.
Kind of getting the data into the same place is a problem that is not that challenging, but then it's getting it integrated for analysis and quality checking it. That can be kind of onerous, and you have a lot of labs and centers that are kind of spinning up their own solutions rather than
Right.
having tools at their fingertips that can.
And I think, now, I mean, one of the things that I think I'm pretty excited about is if you look at how fast and how quick Gen AI has, really kind of taken the industry by storm. I mean, that's supposed to be one of the things that LLMs can actually do pretty good at, right? Is you can teach it with so many different models, and then it can actually do a really good job kind of recognizing, oh, this format should be that format. This is actually the same data. And then, very quickly in real time, kind of do that type of conversion or labeling of the data, explaining what the data is. So I think a lot of the laborious tasks that we were all tasked with, and I remember as an undergrad, I had to do a thesis, and that was one of the things I hated the most. Right, it was doing all of this. I didn't realize why I needed to take so many statistics classes. I needed to program. I think it was an SPSS at the time. Why I needed to do that just to get my thesis out. So that's one of the things that's kind of encouraging. Have you kind of started taking a look at Gen AI and LLMs and kind of seeing how they could probably help speed up, things like automatically tagging the data, organizing the data, doing data quality checks and stuff like that to kind of help with this process, Bruce?
Yeah, so we have a project. So I'll talk about kind of two domains in which we use generative AI in our workflow. So we have a project that we call the Digitally Accountable Public Representation Project, where we're collecting data on online engagement with and by public officials throughout the United States. And so this is a many terabytes data set where we label it for things like dissemination of misinformation, engagement with individual policy topics, and we're able to use fine-tuned large language models in that tagging process. I've also, my collaborators and I, recognized some applied challenges for public officials in this context and started a company that's really focused on helping public officials engage more effectively online. The company's called Public Square Analytics, and
Nice.
we use large language models in our workflow in order to do that. At the end, there's always a human check on any recommendations that we make. But
You always need that, but you can accelerate a lot of the grunt work, right? And the manual and repetitive tasks, which is really kind of what LLMs and generative AI is really good at. So in that case, I think it's very exciting that you've already started seeing this and adopting this. And so hopefully what that means is like you get to come up with, more research ideas, right? And more innovation because you now have been able to save that time, that resource, and that budget to kind of do other things. So hopefully we get to see more cool stuff come out of you and your team, Bruce.
I would say, I should say, two words of caution about this from a perspective of science. So one thing
Yes.
is in science, we want to be both really innovative, right? In order to get something published and get something out there, usually you need to be introducing something new to the world. And also, you want to be very precise in your work. And one of the challenges with the generative tools in their current state is that they're really good at being precise on well-known, well-versed routines.
Right.
It's hard to have the generative AI tools be precise at the cutting edge because it is extrapolating outside of the training data,
Right.
and
Right.
that's also always challenging.
Well, it's not only that too, right? I find that, yes, it has problems being precise, but it's really confident when it gives you the results. Maybe you've got some students like that in your class, Bruce. They're really confident
every walk
at
of
wrong
life.
answers. And I think that's where it might be a little bit difficult for some users who won't even question it, right? Because
Right.
it looks so good. It looks so well presented, right? There's an element of psychology here where they know how to present the results in a way and communicate in a way that just looks so credible that a lot of people may not even bother trying to question and to fact check and to validate and confirm whether that's accurate or not. Well, how do you think that's going to play out? I'm just curious, right? Especially in academia, where you try to be and you got to be really accurate with everything you publish.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the first rule, so I teach courses on machine learning and social network analysis at Penn State. Those are my main, and I also teach a course on sort of what we call the data layer of social data analytics. And of course, a lot of students are now, looking to these tools for assistance with programming. And it's amazing, right? Because you can,
AKA having ChatGPT write their code.
yeah, right, something along those lines.
Yes.
And the number one thing I always talk about is before you do that, you have to come up with a unit test so that you can test whether the code worked or it didn't. Because it, like you said, it can generate something that runs, that if you don't know what the code is supposed to do, can look like it's done the right thing and actually just be wrong. And so it's interesting from an instructor's perspective, with about 14 years of experience pre-ChatGPT, and I learned how to adapt my evaluation and instruction for the omnipresence of these.
Are you saying you had to adapt to catch the cheaters? Is that what you're saying, Bruce?
I don't want to call them cheaters, but just,
innovators,
naive users of these new tools.
Right. No, I think you bring a good point, right? I mean, I think from my perspective, right, we've adopted LLMs, obviously. Like one of the big things that Prometheum does is we do incorporate natural language processing and LLMs so that instead of manually finding the data and manually doing kind of your data prep and your data integration, is you can actually ask a question and you leveraging LLMs, kind of figuring out kind of the context, the intent, and then being able to then assemble the data, right? Find and then assemble the data, and then being able to query the data and then give you the results back. And so, I mean, the first time I remember using it, I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. Like the SQL query was automatically generated. But unfortunately, I knew that data set really well. And so I looked at that SQL and I'm like, well, wait, it's not right. It's not even going to run. I guarantee you. Like, it won't even execute, right? And now I'm saying now, to be fair, it's gotten better, right? It's gotten a lot better. But the nature of enterprise analytics, for those who don't know, is that your data is never in one place. Your data is never in one format. And there's multiple versions of the same data. And there's a lot of things that are called the same table name. There's a lot of things called the same column names. And so there's a lot of human work that kind of goes into the governance, the curation, right, and the proper assembly, right, to create kind of, the trusted, endorsed data sets and so forth, so that people know this is the one that you can trust. And then kind of layering your semantic model or industry data model on top of that data set. So it actually is something that is relevant to your business, right? So when you say churn, you're talking about churn from a retail perspective, maybe not churn from like an enterprise software perspective. And that's where I think there's still that element of that human process that I haven't seen the LLMs do. I haven't seen them quite completely replace yet. And a big reason is right now in most organizations, people use multiple tools to do that process, to do that discovery, fine tune, curation, et cetera, right? So you might have multiple tools from multiple vendors. And it's a little bit of a disjointed process, and people build these complex orchestration layers and so forth. I think that's probably the one thing that's preventing, right, full-blown LLM Gen AI automation. Like when we're talking about kind of enterprise analytics, and this is confirmed when you talk to enterprise customers, it's confirmed when you talk to leading industry analysts like Gartner. They'll tell you like 49% of data leaders and IT leaders can't roll out generative AI projects within their environment because, number one reason, you can't trust the data, right? Data integration challenges, right? Data governance and security challenges. So I think there is still a layer that kind of prevents us from that. Now, if you've got a small environment, small data sets, data's all in one place, one format, you might be lucky, right? No complex semantic models, no complex data models. You might get pretty lucky in being able to do that. But to your point, I think most enterprises are not that lucky, right? Their data is going to be spread out by the nature of having to have complex pipelines today that feed their data warehouse and their data lake. And so there's still a lot of that manual work that's being done. And I think that's where, you talk about your unit test. If you don't know the data really well, and if you don't know what that output should be, right, at least a ballpark, you would just simply take the results and run with it. And this is where I'm seeing a lot of data teams actually refusing to implement Gen AI projects. I was at AWS reInvent recently in Vegas. I was talking to a customer, and that was their challenge, right? And obviously, the C-suite, they're reading about Gen AI everywhere, and they're like, why aren't we doing Gen AI this and everywhere? And kudos to the data leaders. And look, we're not ready, because if we can't trust our data right now, if we can't trust the sources, and there's all these manual processes and all these complex tools that have to be integrated, Gen AI is just going to give you a really fast, wrong answer, because it can't do all the work that's happening right now. And his organization is fortunate for him and his team, because they can look at the output very quickly and say, yeah, no, that's wrong, right? You can't build a result off of this one table, right? I'm telling you right now, like, it actually takes 6 tables from 6 different vendors, and some of these columns don't exist. They're derived columns, et cetera. So it takes experts to be able to kind of validate that. So I think that's probably kind of the last frontier, right? That I think these LLMs probably need to be able to solve. And I think if they can, then I think things get pretty interesting. But I don't know. I think this is where, like, it's still not going to be fully adopted for 100% of use cases yet, especially in the enterprise. And I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts, Bruce.
Yeah, I think right now where the pragmatic frontier for using these tools is figuring out how they can best be applied to one-off siloed tasks that people are spending a lot of time doing. We're still repeating individual simple tasks. Something that happens in academic research, of course, is converting bibliographic styles from one paper style to another. That's something that LLM is actually very good at. And
Yes.
if you could just get everybody in the university to use an LLM for that, and then it's easy to spot check it to make sure it accurately, that would save a lot of time and just building from those one-off tasks. But I agree with you that the sort of cross functionality where something like a generative AI agent can operate different aspects of a project or data operation is pretty far off. It
Yeah.
seems.
Yeah. So what's next? Bruce, you're doing some cool stuff. So, like, what are some of the cool stuff that you would like to do, right? And given kind of the advancements in technology today, like, if we gave you, all the generative AI that you wanted, if we gave you a data fabric so that it automatically gives you a single layer to discover, access, and work with your data, and not to worry about the data integration challenges. Like, imagine if you had all that. Like, what are some cool stuff that you'd love to tackle?
I think the sort of pie in the sky big dream for someone who studies and works with social data like myself is using these tools informed by data, calibrated by data, to generate realistic synthetic social systems that can be experimented on without concerns about cost or ethics. So
Can you give an example? What do you mean a social system?
so something like people interacting online and having like political arguments.
Hmm.
Right. So that is both very expensive to produce in a realistic way and challenging to test interventions on. So, for example, we might say, if someone says this bad word, deplatform them, take them off the platform, and that'll make everything better. Any kind of intervention like that, there are ethical issues, right? There's
Right. Bordering on censorship and, right.
exactly. If it's a government actor, there are freedom of speech questions and all sorts of issues like that. But we, as researchers, we want to know what would happen with the platform of interactions on these social platforms if such interventions could happen, or if the platforms themselves implemented, we're going to have actors like this. They're what they say online be boosted, and we're going to deplatform these types of actors. And we can't get access to that. Of course, companies don't want to experiment with that too much because it could hurt the bottom line.
Right.
But I think one of the things that we're seeing is, for example, LLMs can be used to replicate human responses on surveys. So I think that potentially is just
Be a
like
safe way. Yeah. Okay. I see that now.
and so if you can create a system which is like LLM is generating a whole bunch of agents that are operating like people operate on Facebook or something like that. You can experiment on that system, again, without as many ethical concerns.
That's kind of fascinating. So that might even spill into like survey design, right, for research and so forth. Like, like today, if you wanted to get survey data, you go with like SurveyMonkey or something like that. And it's one of those companies, and they go out and they kind of do the surveys and collect the data and so forth. And you have to wait a while when you do that. So if you could do something like what you just said, that might actually kind of streamline a lot of things from a research perspective, as well as for some of these platforms to be able to get these insights in a much shorter amount of time, and potentially make changes to their policy or make changes to their their features in their platforms. That's pretty cool. Hey, if you want to collaborate on something like that, let me know. I know a guy who knows who can get you a data fabric. So that would be pretty fun experiment to do something like that. So. Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you and learning about social data and kind of cool things that you're doing at Penn State, and for us as well. Really love to kind of see more folks to be aware of your research and the impact your research can have. Really enjoyed having you on my show, and love to touch base with you afterwards and see if we can do some good together.
Yeah, that sounds great, Casey. And if you ever want to check in with any of my colleagues, let me know. Happy to connect you. It's been wonderful talking with you.
That'd be great, everyone. Dr. Bruce Desmarais, thank you so much for your time.